Young love can be an all-consuming experience, and this was certainly the case for 15-year-old Florida teen Seath Jackson, who met and fell in love with Amber Wright during the summer of 2011. For Seath, he felt he had found his dream girl in the doe-eyed, auburn-haired Amber. Tragically for Seath, he couldn't have been more wrong.
This case is the single most cold, calculated, premeditated case of murder that I have ever seen.
Welcome to Fear Files, where we discuss and dissect the most mysterious, terrifying, and mind-bending cases from all over the world. Before we start, we would like to send our thoughts and prayers to the loved ones of Seath Jackson, who fell victim to this abominable act. Welcome to Bellevue, a sleepy town located in the heart of Central Florida. Known as the city with small-town charm, Bellevue is surrounded by lush countryside and green pastures, sparkling freshwater springs, and an abundance of wildlife. But for the teenagers who live in this quiet residential community, life can get a little too quiet. Other than the skate park and a drive-in movie theater in nearby Ocala, Bellevue and its surrounding towns offer little in the way of entertainment. Here, trouble is easy to find, particularly for those who fall in with the wrong crowd. On April 17, 2011, 15-year-old Seath Tyler Jackson was spending his Sunday afternoon how he often did that spring of his sophomore year, hanging out with his friends playing video games. But on this particular Sunday, Seath was agitated. His ex-girlfriend, 15-year-old Amber Wright, kept messaging him. Amber wanted to meet with Seath to talk about rekindling their relationship. She wanted to talk to him alone and suggested meeting at her friend Charlie Ely's trailer. Seath was tempted, but he was also wary. He had just spent weeks embroiled in a bitter and vicious breakup with Amber that had escalated to the point of a physical altercation with Amber's new boyfriend, 18-year-old Michael Bargo. Was this some kind of ploy to get revenge? Seath's friends were also equally skeptical. In their minds, there was something up with Amber's sudden change of heart. They reminded Seath that Amber was bad news and that he didn't need the drama. Seath messaged Amber saying that he was worried she was setting him up to be jumped. She assured him that he wasn't. And when his phone rang a short time later, friends overheard Amber telling Seath that she loved him and that she wanted him back and implored him to meet with her. Seath relented. Beneath his angry bravado, Seath still loved Amber and had been heartbroken over her for weeks. A short time later, Seath left his friend's house, claiming he was on his way home and headed out for the night. It was the last time any of his friends would see him alive. In late 2010, Seath Jackson was in his sophomore year of high school. The youngest of three boys, Seath had grown up enjoying life in rural Florida, climbing trees, skateboarding, and BMXing, much of it with his best friend, William Samalot. William and Seath had been friends for as long as they could remember. More like brothers, William said, and Seath was the kind of person who would do anything for you. At 14, life was good for Seath Jackson. Tall for his age, Seath was good-looking, bright, and popular. He had a reputation for being cool, calm, and collected. William and Seath shared many of the same interests, including a love of mixed martial arts and, more recently, a growing interest in parties and girls. And a lot of girls wanted to date Seath Jackson. In December of 2010, 14-year-old Seath began dating a pretty, petite, auburn-haired girl named Amber Wright. Amber was confident and popular with a wide circle of friends. The connection between them was instant. Seath, for his part, was infatuated with Amber. All too quickly, the pair became inseparable. Seath's parents, Scott and Sonia, remembered them always being together, watching TV or playing basketball in the backyard. In early March 2011, Seath professed his love for Amber on his Facebook page, but while the relationship was intense, it was also volatile. Much of their relationship revolved around drinking and smoking cannabis. The two had trust and jealousy issues and fought hard and often. Meanwhile, Seath's parents perceived a distinctly manipulative aspect to Amber's character, but it was not enough to set off any serious alarm bells, and certainly not enough to predict in their wildest dreams the evil that Amber would soon prove herself capable of. Amber and Seath's relationship came to an end in the latter part of March 2011, when Amber abruptly dumped Seath. But if their relationship had been toxic and turbulent, it would be nothing compared to their breakup. On March 28th, Seath announced on Facebook that he was single. Within days, the two had begun a vicious back and forth of insults and incendiary name-calling for all their friends to see. Seath had discovered that Amber had cheated on him and posted comments calling her a slut and a cheat. In one post, he accused her of using meth. One post attracted 37 comments, with several of Seath's Facebook friends calling him out both on his language and the accusations. As for Amber's posts, she claimed that she had never loved Seath. In one she wrote, "Just do me a favor and consider me dead to you. I never loved you. I don't even want to hear your name." In another she wrote, "It takes a real man to accept the fact that he got broke up with." Seath responded, "We both need to just let all of this go. Yeah, we split. Yeah, it hurt, but I'm over it. I'm just not going to let Mike have his cake and eat it too." The Mike that Seath was referring to was 18-year-old Michael Shane Bargo. Bargo was the boy Amber had cheated on him with, and Seath had now discovered that Amber and Bargo were dating. It was information that would consume Seath with jealousy and hurt, and escalate the conflict to new heights. Seath had already known Michael Bargo for some time. The two actively disliked each other. Since his arrival in Florida 2 years earlier, Bargo had gained a reputation for trying to be perceived as a tough guy, an image that Seath wasn't buying. Still, there was no doubt that Bargo was troubled. He had grown up in a home filled with violence and conflict. According to his mother, Bargo's father was an alcoholic with an explosive temper, and as he grew older, Bargo himself would often explode in extreme fits of rage. After Bargo moved to Florida at 16 to live with his father, he dropped out of school and moved out of his father's home, drifting from house to house, staying with friends. Twice he had been arrested for burglary. He had an active restraining order against him and was known for carrying a .22 caliber revolver everywhere he went. Later, Amber would claim that she only dated Bargo to goad and hurt Seath. If that was her goal, she succeeded. Seath was devastated by the loss of Amber to Bargo. Bargo now became the crux of Seath's issue with Amber and the target of his anger. Seath took to openly taunting and threatening Bargo on Facebook. He repeatedly challenged him to a fight. Some of Seath's friends weighed in on the feud enthusiastically, calling Bargo soft and implying that he would soon get beaten up by Seath if Bargo would come out and fight like a man. Meanwhile, Amber had told Bargo that Seath had been physically abusive to her throughout their relationship, adding fuel to the fire. As the feud gained momentum, Bargo ranted to friends about his hatred for Seath. The feud then spread to Amber's half-brother, Kyle Hooper. 16-year-old Kyle was dating a girl named Alyssa. In the midst of the Seath feud with Bargo, Alyssa broke up with Kyle over the phone, and when Kyle turned up at her house to talk to her, he found her in bed with Seath. Both sides now traded threats of physical violence. Seath threatened to burn Amber's house down. What had been an online battle quickly spilled into the real world. After finding out that Amber and Bargo were going to a local party, Seath turned up and confronted him. A heated exchange took place before Seath laid the older boy out in front of a crowd of peers. The humiliation of being beaten by the younger Seath would prove to be too bitter a pill for Bargo to swallow. And what Seath could not have possibly known then was that Bargo was no ordinary love rival. Bargo was someone with a deeply disturbed mind, a man with no moral compass and no sense of compassion, and certainly no limits when it came to the suffering he was willing to inflict on a person in the name of restoring his pride. If there was such a thing as the wrong crowd in the Bellevue area, it was the teens who hung around 18-year-old Charlie K. Ely's trailer in rural Summerfield. Charlie's trailer was a popular hangout spot for teens looking for somewhere to party away from the rules and restrictions of home. And with her husband in jail and rent to cover, Charlie had let out rooms to Justin Soto, age 20, Kyle Hooper, age 16, and Michael Bargo. Kyle Hooper had left home after fighting with his current stepfather over drug use. Justin Soto had juvenile arrests for possession of a weapon on school property, battery, and burglary. Bargo, meanwhile, was the self-appointed ringleader of the posse that hung out at Charlie's. On the afternoon of April 17th, Bargo shared with his group his plans to kill Seath Jackson. There that day were Justin Soto, Kyle Hooper, Amber Wright, Charlie Ely, and 37-year-old James Young Havens III, the former stepfather to Amber and Kyle and a regular visitor at Charlie's. According to Kyle, Bargo said, "We need to kill Seath Jackson. Nobody likes him. We need to kill him." Bargo had already thought through exactly how to do it and the role that each of them would play. Bargo's idea was to lure Seath to the trailer through Amber, who would invite Seath over under the pretense of wanting to rekindle their relationship. Once Seath was in the house, Justin Soto would hit Seath with an axe handle or piece of wood before Bargo and Hooper would move in and shoot and beat him. Bargo would then take him to the bathtub to finish the job. He was emphatic that Seath should still be alive at that moment he killed him. He wanted to look into Seath's face before he pulled the trigger, so Seath would know exactly who it was that was ending his life. Most teenagers would have recoiled at Bargo's proposal. The plot was abominable, inconceivable, no matter what real or imagined crimes Seath had committed. But not with this group. Within minutes of hearing Bargo's plan, all five were on board. And in the same way a group of teenagers might plan a party, they began to hash out the finer details of their twisted plot. Mid-discussion, James left to go home, later claiming he felt uncomfortable. Not so uncomfortable, of course, that he would try to deter the teenagers from acting on their deranged plan or even to inform the police. Just enough to not hear any more. And indeed, he would return the next day to help the teenagers dispose of the body. Shortly after 7 p.m., Amber contacted Seath and told him of her hopes to reconcile and her desire to meet up. She pulled out all the stops to reassure him that he could trust her and that she loved him, knowing full well that with each sentence she was wooing Seath towards a violent and certain death. Moments before Seath left his friend's house to meet Amber, he sent one last message. It said, "Amber, if you have me jumped, I will never give you the time of day. So if I get jumped, say goodbye, all right?" Seth's gut was telling him that something was wrong, but his concerns centered around getting a beating. That Amber and her friends could have been planning his own diabolical slaying was simply beyond the realm of any sane person's imagination. At 7:58 p.m., Amber sent a message telling Seath to meet her at the corner close to Charlie's home. When Seath replied that he was almost there, Amber responded enthusiastically, "See you there." When they finally met, Seath was surprised to find Charlie with Amber, but Amber reassured him and persuaded him to come back to Charlie's. He agreed. Once in the house, he found Kyle there, but Kyle was friendly, and once again, Amber placated him, asking Kyle to leave the room so she could talk to Seath in private. With the plan now in full swing, Kyle joined Bargo in a back room to prepare for the moment the savage attack would begin. It was at this moment that Kyle had a flicker of conscience. Faced with the reality of what lay ahead, Kyle expressed his doubts to Bargo, who quickly put them to rest. He reminded Kyle of all the things Seath had done, sleeping with Kyle's girlfriend, disrespecting his sister, trying to jump them. Seath deserved to die. In the living room, with Amber distracting Seath, Kyle and Soto emerged from their rooms and began beating Seath with pieces of wood. In an instant, Seath was on his feet and running for the door. It was now Bargo's turn. He opened fire, shooting Seath twice in the back. Seath made it out the door and almost to the road before Soto tackled him to the ground, and together with Kyle and Bargo, wrestled him back into the house. He was then dragged into the bathroom, bloodied and mortally wounded, but still alive, and placed in the bathtub. Bargo now instructed Kyle and Soto to help Amber and Charlie clean the blood splatter from the living room and kitchen while he had his turn dealing with Seath. Kyle later said that he heard Bargo yelling and cussing and beating Seath and the sound of more gunshots. Bargo then delivered his final shot, this time in the face, killing him instantly. The final atrocity now began, the gruesome disposal of the body. Michael Bargo broke Seath's kneecaps with a baseball bat and hogtied him in order to fit the lifeless body into a sleeping bag. He then pulled out Seath's teeth with pliers. Together, the group dragged the boy's body into Charlie's fire pit, where a fire had been prepared and was already burning fiercely. After placing the body in the pit, the group sat around the pyre like it was a festive bonfire, drinking, laughing, and talking, all the while tending to the burning body of their innocent victim until it was nothing more than ashes and bone fragments. Neighbors would later recall seeing terrifyingly high flames and the sounds of what they thought were fireworks, but the music and laughter convinced them that a party was being held. The next day, James Young Havens stepped in to help the teenagers dispose of the remains. He helped them shovel Seath's remains into 3 5-gallon cans, which were thrown into a nearby flooded lime pit. He then helped them clean up the last of the bloodstains in the house with bleach. Once everything was clean, the group relaxed and played basketball. Seath had always made sure to call his parents if he was going to be late or not coming home at night. When he failed to return home without phoning on the night of April 17th, the young man's mother knew instinctively that something was terribly wrong. Early the next day, she reported the disappearance to the police, and by the day after, his disappearance was being broadcast all over the local news. Several miles down the road, Kyle Hooper was watching TV that day with his mother Tracy. When the news of Seath's disappearance came on the air, Kyle promptly admitted to having witnessed the murder, but denied any involvement. Tracy immediately notified the police. Later that day, as she sat at the local police department, she had not the slightest idea that both of her children had been key players in the murder of Seath Jackson, and that neither would ever be returning home.
Detectives are piecing together the final brutal moments of Seath Jackson's life.
The local teen was beaten, shot, mutilated, burned into ashes, and his remains sunk to the bottom of a local quarry.
West 2's Kendra A. with the late-breaking details tonight from Marion County.
Lead detectives tell West 2 News they believe they know where the murder weapon has been hidden, but right now they are not telling us whether it has been found. Crime scene techs wrapped up scouring the property here for evidence where they say 15-year-old Seath Jackson was viciously murdered.
This is ruthless.
Friends of 15-year-old Seath Jackson continue to visit his memorial. Cars pass by the Summerfield house where the teen met a violent end. Investigators say he was lured to the home by former girlfriend, 9th grader Amber Wright, then attacked, shot, and burned. Detectives say Wright's new boyfriend, Michael Bargo, is the mastermind behind the killing.
Potentially you are facing the death penalty.
Bargo faced a judge with a gash on his eye and forehead. Investigators tell West 2 News he had the cuts when they arrested him. The suspects tell police the victim tried to run from the home after Bargo shot him and was still alive even after the group dragged him into the bathtub and broke his kneecaps to stuff him in a sleeping bag. Friends believe he fought for his life.
Seth was a little fighter. I hope Seth messed them all up.
Right now, Bargo and the teen accused of grabbing the victim as he tried to run, Justin Soto, are on suicide watch at the jail.
Maybe he wants to actually die so he doesn't have to remember anything.
Crime scene techs wrapped up sifting through evidence focused on a bin in the backyard near the fire pit. Even experienced detectives are shaken, as those close to Seath Jackson.
That's hard to believe, isn't it? That you could get 5 people together that would think that was a good idea. It's still unbelievable to me.
Who gave them the right to take somebody's life? Who made them God? Nobody did.
Right now, Wright and her brother remain in juvenile detention. Their stepdad, accused of helping to cover up the crime, has been released on bond. The 4 suspects charged as adults will be back in court May 24th. In Marion County, Kendra Strike, WESH 2 News.
Detective Rhonda led the investigation. Kyle was the first to confess to his role in the murder of Seath Jackson. Kyle admitted to being the first to hit Seath over the head with a wooden stick. He claimed that then he told Seath to run and get out of the house, and said he was shocked when he saw Bargo shoot Seath.
I hit him over the head with a stick. Who'd you hit? Seath. Okay. And he was in the chair, and I got him in the kitchen. I said, now get house. And then all of a sudden I hear, bam, bam, bam. Mike sitting there laying bullets into it.
So you saw Mike Bargo shoot Seath?
Yes, ma'am. And he grabbed the body, put it into the bathtub, and then he was talking about how he was going to burn it, and then there was a rock quarry over here by Gator Mountain or whatever, and he was going to dump the ashes or whatever into the rock quarry.
How many times did Mike shoot him?
I don't know. I heard a...
With Bargo nowhere to be found, Amber, Charlie, and Justin Soto were now called in for questioning. In Amber's first version of the night's events, she claimed that Seath had knocked on the door of the trailer and had asked to speak to her. She allowed him in and sat with him on the couch when Kyle suddenly burst in the room and knocked him over the head. She and Charlie panicked and ran to Charlie's bedroom, where they heard the sound of multiple gunshots. They stayed hidden there all night, only emerging the next day to find the house smelling strongly of bleach. Charlie gave a similar version of events. During their interrogation, each suspect was quick to throw Bargo under the bus and denied any premeditation or knowledge of what Bargo had intended for Seath. But the police left Kyle, Charlie, and Amber to chat alone in an interrogation room. Unaware that they were being recorded, the 3 spoke openly of their roles in the death of Seath and their concerns about being caught. In a matter of minutes, they had sown the seeds of their own demise and a lifetime that would be spent behind bars. Detectives soon tracked down Bargo 80 miles away at a friend's house. Kyle's confession led to the arrest of all 6 suspects within days, including James, who was arrested as an accessory to murder.
I went away. I left. I thought it was a joke because, I don't know what to say because I'm looking at a lot of years right now. I'm scared. I don't have a freedom now. I've lost everything now.
What about the 15-year-old who's dead and was mutilated?
He lost his life too.
Although they were juveniles, each of the suspects were ultimately tried as adults. At separate trials, Amber Wright, Charlie Ely, and Kyle Hooper were each found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Justin Soto pled guilty and received a life sentence. James Havens received a 10-year sentence for being an accessory to murder. Michael Bargo initially pled not guilty, but was eventually convicted and sentenced to death, becoming the youngest person on Florida's death row.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Michael Shane Bargo Jr., should be sentenced to death. Yes.
Michael Bargo holds his head after hearing he is sentenced to death for the 2nd time on Tuesday. In 2013, 10 out of 12 jurors decided he should be put to death, but since then, a new state law requiring that death penalties be unanimous gave Bargo another chance. Prosecutors say Bargo was the leader in a group's plot to kill 15-year-old Seath Jackson at a Summerfield home.
A 15-year-old child knew he was being dragged back into a house and was going to die.
Bargo and 4 others beat and shot Jackson to death 8 years ago. The group burned his body and disposed of it in paint buckets, which were dumped into a water-filled quarry. The defense argues Bargo suffers from mental illnesses and should be spared.
He was not taking any medication for any of the mental illnesses that he had been diagnosed with.
The judge explains to the jury the new rules.
If you do not all 12 agree, then you check no.
And a few hours later,
has the jury reached a verdict?
We have.
Each of the jurors decide Bargo should be killed. Jackson's mother attended each of the hearings and shows signs of relief. As for Bargo's 4 co-defendants, each of them is serving life in prison.
While Michael Bargo led the violence that night that ultimately killed Seath Jackson, it was the contribution of all 6 perpetrators that made the prolonged and brutal slaying of 15-year-old Seath possible. Seath was outnumbered in a house specifically set up for his own murder. He was repeatedly overpowered, making it impossible for him to escape the depravity of Bargo. And he was only there in the first place because of the incomprehensible cruelty of Amber Wright, who used his own feelings for her to lure him into a death trap. It could even be argued that it was Amber's deliberate stoking of the rivalry between Seath and Bargo that was the catalyst for the entire murder itself. During her trial, the prosecution said of Wright, "The defendant probably played the most important role in that murder. She was the bait. She was the one who lured Seath Jackson to that house." If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and subscribe to the channel. Also hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.